But yeah.
So we have a good drive.
We're on Daf Tes Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top. Hanabe Trei Tavchi. There were these two butchers, the Abdi and Yani Bahadi Adad. They made an agreement amongst themselves. The Chol the Ovid Biyume the Chavre, which the way it worked in those days was, if someone ran a butcher shop, they would butcher things and then they would sell them immediately. There was no refrigeration. So it wasn't efficient to have everyone selling on the same day. So it'd make up, well, you do one day and I'll do the other day. So that way they could sell out whatever they their inventory. So that's what they made up. And they said if anyone would violate this agreement, nakru lemashche, they would rip up whatever hides. That would be his penalty. They would rip up the leather that had come from the animals. And one of them Taka did like this. He worked on the day that his friend was supposed to be working. And they penalized him. The other butcher, Taka, ripped up his leather. Also, the Kamei de Rava, they came to Rava, person, the one who had violated the agreement and worked on a day he wasn't supposed to work, came and said, this guy ripped up my leathers. Chayvinu. Rava said, your agreement does not have the force of law that you can impose a penalty. Chayvinu Rava lishlume. Rava required him to pay. He asked from him that we had just said that a local government is allowed to impose penalties for people who sell at a higher price, or they could make wage controls, they can make minimum wages, they could do all these things, and it ends off saying that you can impose a penalty. So why is this any different? Why couldn't they make an agreement and impose a penalty as treating them as a local government, as a municipality? Lo yahadale, Rava. Rava did not reply. Amra Papa Shabar Hadale Midi. It makes sense that Rava did not respond because that which a local government can make a rule and then impose a penalty and actually cause the penalty to be paid. That's if there's no Adam Chashav around. There's no Rosh Ha'ir, Talmud Chacham. But if there's an Adam Chashav, you have to go get the agreement and have the Adam Chashav put it in his name, right? So, like if you were living in the 1980s and Ramosha was in town, Ramosha Feinstein, you couldn't just go and say, "I'm going to make a rule that butchers are not allowed to work on Tuesdays." You had to go to Ramosha and get him to agree to it. So that's the reason they didn't do it. And the reason why Rava didn't say this because Rava himself was the Gadol Shabir. He was the person that they should have gone to. So he didn't want to say you have to come to me because that would appear like guy. Okay, Tan Rabban. Ein mechashmim b'tzedakah im gaboy tzedakah. One does not. This is a very hard thing for people to follow. It's a common issue. You cannot look over the shoulder of a gabi tzedakah. If someone is, let's say, running a yeshiva, and you say, before I give my donation, I want you to give me a full accounting of where all the money goes. One is not allowed to do that. The same thing when you give hektish you can't go to the gizbarim and ask them how they're spending the money. Even though there's no raya for this, there's a mashmois of this in the pasuk. People who gave the money for the Mishkan, they didn't go back to the Oisei HaMalacha, to Betzalel Ben Uri, and the others who are doing the work to get an accounting of how they spent the money. Because they do it, they're trusted to do the work. So even though this is talking about people who are donating money for the Binyan Beis HaMishkan, which they were required to do, it's still, we can transpose it to the din of tzedakah, that when one gives tzedakah, it doesn't give you a right to ask for an accounting, to say there's too many administrators, I don't like that you're having a gym program, I don't like that you're paying for tutoring. You pay, if you give tzedakah, you got to give tzedakah and not worry about how it's spent. This is just general advice about how to run your life and your business. Even though someone has a trusted administrator or a shamish in his house, yotzer v'yimna, he should still tie up his money and count it before he hands it to him. Shnema v'yatzur v'yimnu. That's what the pasuk says in Malachim. When they were doing the construction of the renovation of the Beis Hamikdash, it says they tied up and they counted the monies. Amar Rav Huna, boitkin lemezainis ve'ein boitkin luxus. I mean, obviously, there's going to be different. We said things that are opposite of this, right? Before we said that a gabbai stock has to be very careful, that he shouldn't put things into his own pocket because of the appearance of impropriety. So it goes both ways. The gabbai stock have to do everything possible to make it evident that they're being honest. The people are giving stock have to then trust them. Amar Rav Huna, boitkin lemezainis ve'ein boitkin luxus. When one gives tzedakah, we check when someone comes to take from the soup kitchen, you have to, or when he comes to ask for money for food, you check into it. But we're not boidik if he says he needs clothing. Iba yisei makrov, iba yisei misvara. You either learn it from a pasuk or from a svara. Iba yisei misvara, hai kamavazi, v'hai kamavazi. If you see a person who's asking for money for clothing, obviously he doesn't have clothing. He's walking around with ripped clothing. He's being mavaz himself. So you don't go check that he has a suit at home because lemaisa he's being mavaz himself when he's asking. This word prois is read with a samach, but it's written with I think it's written also with a samach in our Sefer Torah, but our Gemara has it with a shin. But we dash in prois. You should distribute to those who are lerav, to those who are hungry, their food. B'shinkse, it's written with a kshin, and we therefore read it peroish, that you should be mafarish. You should go and check whether they need the food. Vadar, and then it can use havle, and then afterwards you give them. V'hasam ksiv l'gabi clothing, it says kitira araim v'chisisa. If you see him that he's not clothed, you should clothe him. Kitira la'alter. As soon as you see him that he's not wearing clothing, you should give him. Yehuda says the other way around. Rav Yehuda, you check for clothing, you don't check for giving food. You could say that obviously someone who doesn't have food is in physical pain. If you don't have food, you're hungry. Someone who doesn't have clothing is it's not physical pain, it's embarrassment, but it's not pain. And now we're reading it with the samach, the way it's written, the way it's said, not the way it's written. Distribute immediately to someone who needs food. The way it's read. When you'll see someone who's unclothed, then you should clothe him. You have to check, make sure that he really doesn't have another pair of clothing at home. Tani Kabas Rav Yehuda, a riot of Yehuda that we check for clothing but not for food. Amar Kitsuni Boitkin Achra Persuni Pernisuni a Boitkin. If someone says clothe me, you check on him. If he says provide me with food, you're not baited. Tanan Hasan. Ein Paiskin the ani ha'ever mimakam l'makam mikikar betunya me'arba soim b'sela. You don't give less for an ani that's going from one place to another. You have to give him every day enough food to eat. So the way you do it is a kikar b'punyan, a loaf of bread that costs a punyan, be'arba soim b'sela. When wheat is being sold at 4 soim b'sela, so Rashi said, so that's that amount of money, a punyan, as compared to a sela, will get you enough. Rashi says, I think it comes out to 6 kavin, and that's enough for a person to have enough food for the day. It's a half a kav, which is 6 bayin. Lon, if the person needs to sleep over, nice and light parnosus lina, you give him enough that he should be able to sleep over. My parnosus lina, what does that mean? Amar Papa, Purio Besad, you give him a place and a blanket. Shabbos, when it comes to Shabbos, nice and light mazon shalosh sudas, you give him enough food for 3 sudas. Tana, All this is an ani who's recently become an ani and he has no resources at all. But if he's an experienced ani, he's a meshulach who already has a whole routine, and he goes around and collects money from people, then you don't have to provide for him anymore. Because he can take care of himself. He can go collect money. So you don't, when we're talking about giving from that ain't paiskim la'ani over mirakim la'makim, that's talking about from the communal resources, from the tamchui that we talked about, and from the kupa. So that's the distributions that the Gaboy stock would make. But once a person is able to collect for himself, there's no need to provide for him from the communal funds. Hu anya, there was an ani that was going around. He was a schnorrer and he knew how to get money. Also, there papa. He came to a papa who was the Gabayt stocker for his town. Lend his and he didn't give him. Like we just said in the Gemara, you don't give. The Gabayt stocker doesn't give to such a person. Amalei of Sama brother of Yevel or a papa. He said to her papa, there's a problem. If you're going to not give him, everyone's going to see that he came to you to ask, and you said no. So they're going to think he's not a trustworthy person. He's a fraud, and nobody else will give him. And then you're going to ruin his whole mashulach business. Limus, so what should you do? You should die. Amalei, but we said that if it's someone who knows how to collect, you shouldn't give him. So what are you telling me? I should give him in order that he should be able to, it shouldn't ruin his credibility. But that's not what the psak is that I don't give. He said the township, the municipality should give him some small amount. So, like I imagine, they have these papers that they go to get from the township. Certain towns have implemented that. When you want to collect, you get a paper that says you're not a fraud. Those people who give the paper should also give a little bit of money. Should give them $5 with it, so that people shouldn't think that they're frauds. Amar Ravasi, person should never give less than a third of a shekel in a year. That's the minimum amount to be yotze yechiv of tzedakah. This pasuk is said in Nehemiah, and it says that the minimum amount is a third of a shekel. Tzedakah is compared to all the mitzvahs. Mitzvah ain't kan ela mitzvahs. Doesn't say mitzvah, it says mitzvahs. That giving tzedakah is shkula, opposite all of the mitzvahs. Amar Abelazar, gadol ha'ma'aser yosem and ha'oser. Someone who causes other to give is even greater than the one who gives. Shenema v'haya masa at tzedakah shalom. The ma'isa of tzedakah is shalom, v'avodas at tzedakah hashket v'ber. And the actual act of giving tzedakah causes, when someone is ma'asa tzedakah, he causes tzedakah to be given. That brings shalom. Shalom is peace. Avodas at tzedakah hashket v'ber. It causes like a ceasefire, causes quiet, but not a permanent peace. So the permanent peace comes from the ones who cause others to give tzedakah, and the tzedakah itself causes a lower level, brings a lower level of shalom, a temporary shalom. If a person is zeich, if a person is doing the right thing, this is a different point. If someone is doing in general the right thing, he's going to be zeicha, that he's going to be able to distribute l'ra'av to those who are hungry their bread. He'll be zeicha to give tzedakah. Lo zachav aniyim merudim tavi bayis. And if not, the government, aniyim merudim is the marauders, I would say, which is the government, will come and take it in taxes. Amal hurav l'bnei mechuzah. The Metusa Minaifu said to the people of Mechuzah, I beg of you, Oise Bahadi Adadi, give tzedakah to one another, in order that you'll be good with your government. When you give tzedakah, then the government doesn't oppress you and take money from you. But if you're not going to give your tzedakah, the Rebbe Shalom intends for you to have a certain amount of money every year, and some of it's going to be given to others. and you can either give it to tzedakah. If you don't give it to tzedakah, it's going to go to the government. The Amar of Elazar is Mansha Beis Hamikdash Kaim Adam Shekel Shikloi or Miskapeloi. A person can give his shekel, his matzahs a shekel, and he'll get his kapara. Achshav She'em Beis Hamikdash Kaim. In Moisim tzedakah mutav. If you give tzedakah, it's good. V'im lav boy and Oivdei Kechavim Noitlam B'Zraya. The Oivdei Kechavim will come and take your tzedakah from you. V'alf B'kein Nechshav Lehen Tzedakah. And even so, even though when you're not Zeicha, when we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, the government comes and takes your money, that's also considered tzedakah. Shenama v'noiksha tzedakah. Those who oppress you, those who take from you, that is tzedakah. The Mefarshim explained that means that since there's a progressive tax system, and you take more from the wealthy than from the poor, so in that sense, there's a redistribution of wealth that comes from the government, and that also has, in some sense, a status of tzedakah. Amara, Hai Mosa Ishtoili Avla Ula Mishagesh Archasediima. This thing was told to me by Ula. Ula is the name, it means a child. Mishagesh Archasediima, who made his mother a shtickle crazy, who made his mother do something unnatural. And with the Gemara later on will explain what was the story that caused him to be called this. Mishmei Rav Elazar, anyway, I heard it from this child who the Mefarshim say grew up to be Rav Sheshes. Mishmei Rav Elazar, he said it b'shem Rav Elazar. Ma'idach sev ha'yil b'shtaka k'shiryan, the weird staka like a coat of chain link armor. Le'melcha ma'shiryan zeh kol klipa u'klipa b'tzarafes u'shiryan gadol. Just like an armor, a chain link armor, every link adds up to a full beged that protects him. So too, pruta tzedakah, every bit adds up, even though you give a small amount, it adds up to provide, to do great chasad. Beged idim, beged not good beged, koltzit koisenu. It has all of our tzidkas. Ma beged zeh kol nimo nimo mitzarefes lebeged gadol. At tzedakah kol pruta pruta mitzarefes lecheshbon gadol. Same thing, like a beged. Each thread adds up to a beged. The sum is more than the whole is more than the sum of its parts. So too with tzedakah, the meisim that you're able to accomplish with tzedakah, every pruta helps. Now the Gemara goes back to Amai Karli Ula Mishagish Archas Edima. Why Rav Sheshes is called the child caused his mother to act in an unusual way. How do we know that a mitzayra? So a mitzayra, when he becomes tamei mitzayra, after he becomes tamei, when he wants to become tar, after his simone mitzayra go away, he has to first bring two tziparim, then wait a week, and then he can bring the rest of his karbanos. So during that week, he still has a din of being somewhat tamei. So mitzayra b'meisi purei shemetama adam. If he touches a person, he'll be metama a person. Amaloi hayil metama v'gadam metama adam. Since the pasuk says by a person a mitzayra b'meisi purei that he has to wash his clothing at the end of that time, at the end of the week, so you know that the begadim that he's wearing become tamei. So we say he also is metama an adam when he touches him. Amalei, no, dilma tuam b'chiburim shani. Maybe the tumah of wearing clothing is more chomer than touching a person. The hesed nevela, when someone, if you have a nevela is tamei. If someone moves a nevela, the metama begadim, it's metama is begadim, but ain't metama adam. But that person who becomes tamei from moving a nevela is not metama adam. So you see that the standards for being metama something you're wearing it's easier to be metama the begadim you're wearing than by touching another person. So maybe that would be the same case by mitzayra. So even though mitzayra is metama begadim, maybe that he wears, he's not metama when he touches something. Amalei sheretz the metama adam inal. And how do we know that a sheretz, which is also told me that it's metama if an adam touches it? Lamishum the metama begadim, isn't it because that if someone's wearing clothing when he touches begadim, he's tamei? Zok the Gemara, Amalei sheretz behedjik sibei. No, there's this pasuk b'hedya that directly says by his sheretz that he's also metama when he touches another. Sheretz. Torah says when a person touches, any person touches sheretz, he becomes tummy. Ela shichva zera de metama adam minalin. How do you know that shichva zera, the actual zera, that a person is mitzi, a man is mitzi, that it's metama adam minal? La mishum dahil metama gadem metama adam. We could say the same. Then maybe it's l'chayr because the Torah says that it's metama begadim, and therefore we say it's also metama when it touches an adam. Not magic sebe. Oyish l'rabis sanegea as l'rabis sanegea. It says oy to say even someone who touches shechvazera is tamei. So ahadale b'bdichasa. All these things they asked Rav Achduboy Bar Ami. He asked Rav Sheshes, and Rav Achduboy, Rav Sheshes tried to answer. Rav Achduboy answered him with b'bdichasa, with somewhat of disrespectful tone. Cholish died to the Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes was depressed. He was upset by the way he was answered. Ishtik Rav Achduboy Bar Ami v'Isyaka Tamuda. Rav Achduboy Bar Ami, because of the upset that he caused to Rav Sheshes by answering him in a disrespectful way, he became mute and he forgot what he had learned. Asya Ime, so the mother of this Achduboy Bar Ami, the Kabachas Kamei, and she cried to Rav Sheshes. She cried and cried, and Rav Sheshes did not answer. Amalei, Chazi Lahani Chedi, the Matzas Minai. She exposed herself and she showed that she said, this is where my son nursed from. Ba'arachli. So that at that point, Rav Sheshes caused Rav Sheshes to be merachim on Rav Achduboy, and he was mispal for him. Ba'arachli alev istai, and he was cured. So this is why Rav Sheshes was called Mishamash Archasei De'ema. He caused the mother to act in this way. But we never answered the question. How do we know that a mitzayra, the Meisi Puroi, is metame when it touches another? It says kibus begadim these 7 days after you brought the tutsi pyrim, when he's on his way to become tar, and it says that he has to wash his clothing when he's a tamei mitzayra hechlet, he's for sure a mitzayra and hasn't yet started to go away. Just like when a person is a full-fledged mitzayra, he's metama adam, which the pasuk says directly. Avka metama adam. We make a hekesh to this also. He's also metama adam. Omar Rabbi Lazar, Gadol oiset staka b'seiser yoytze mi Moshe Rabbeinu. Someone who gives staka in hiddenly without trumpeting his accomplishments, he gets more schar, that he's in a certain sense greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu ksiv ki agarti b'pnei afa achema. But Moshe Rabbeinu says, I'm afraid of the anger, and chema is another way of saying anger. The one who gives b'seiser will turn away the af, will turn away the anger. And he'll, with a shaychid, by giving, shaychid means to give, b'chik in his chest, meaning hiddenly, chema aza. Then he's also taking away the strong chema, the rage. So he says that you take away both the af and the chema, Rabbi Shalom's anger and his rage. Af kaifa chema ain't a kaifa. Af kaifa chema ain't a kaifa. Matan b'seisa can take away the af, the lower level of anger, but the chema, the rage, that he can't take away. Shenema b'shachad b'chek chema aza. Doesn't say that when he gives the shaychid b'chek in his chest, he's gonna take away the chema aza. It says there is chema aza that replay. That means there still remains the chema aza. Whenever a dayan takes shaychid, whenever he takes bribery, he brings a great rage to the world. Misparach b'sheish brachas. Whoever gives a fruit to the Unani is misparach b'sheish brachas. V'vaisa b'dvarim misparach b'yud aleph brachas. And if in addition to giving him money, you also console him, you make him feel good, you get 11 brachas. And this is the pasuk we said before. Hale proish, what is the pasuk? Hale parish l'roi v'achmech v'anim rum tavi bayis ki tira aram v'chisisayim v'v'sarcha loy tesala. This is the pasuk in Yeshaya, and this is the Bach brings all the additional parts, the next two psukim, which shall tell you about the brachas that he gets. That adds up to 6 brachas. From Mafaisi B'dvar Misbarach Ba'achas Esei brachas Shenava B'tofek l'Ra'ev Nafshecha. He brings out to one who's hungry his nefesh, his soul. The nefesh Nana Tasbia, and a person who is in pain, he satisfies him. The Zarach B'choshech Orcha, and this will light up the darkness. The Afalascha Ketzarayim, and the deep darkness will be like the morning. Nachach Hashem Tamid, Hashem will turn to you, V'shbia b'tzachtzachas nafshecha, and he will satisfy him in that which your nefesh requires. Ubanu mimcha charvas olam, and you're going to rebuild the ruins of the world. Moistei dar v'dar tekuma, the foundations of every dar you'll bring up. And the pasuk lists overall 11 brachas that come, and like the pasuk started, when you satisfy the nefesh nena tashpia, when someone who's in pain, you satisfy him, means not satisfying materially, but satisfying his emotional needs. Someone who's roidev to give tzedakah, he's going to then end up that he needs to get tzedakah. What kind of bracha is that he's going to get tzedakah? Someone who is roidev to give tzedakah, the Rebbeinu will give him the ability to provide tzedakah. The Rebbeinu will provide him that the people who give tzedakah to, there'll be people who taka need tzedakah, and he'll be yotze the mitzvah of giving tzedakah. To go, this is coming to exclude what Rava dash. The Darish Rabba might have said, and there'll be stumbling blocks in front of you, and they're gonna stumble in front of you, and the Rosh will punish them at the time of his apecha, at the time of his anger. I feel b'shasha chayvin yitzar avakshon lasted stakel v'nechach shum bnei adam she'enim muganim. This is a klala that Yirmiyah said, that he sat there for these people who were chasing him, who were making his life difficult, that he should make sure that even when they do tzedakah, it should end up going to people who they're not going to get any schar from it. In order that they shouldn't get any schar. Okay, we're going to stop over here, and I'll Bez Hashem tomorrow morning at 6:30 on Zoom.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach.